I mean, I think we should be live. Give me.
There's a blinking light that says live up in the left corner for me.
You can't trust the you can't trust the blinking lights.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I couldn't
Oh,
even
yeah.
trust my own
Yes,
phone for a second there.
yes, we are live. We are definitely live. Okay, the
Boom.
blinking light speaks the truth.
Hey, everybody, if there's anybody.
Yeah, we're joined today. We're joined this hour by Donny Jackson, who is an amazing, amazing, amazing spoken word poet, writer. Just a performance poet, but also a brilliant, 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 poet. Just literary, just reads beautifully. Very, very honored. Very, very excited. He's got a magnificent book that he's going to tell us about. Really, 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 really. This is going to be a great hour. Donny, please take it away.
Matt, thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. This poem is called Oath. I hear other voices when you cry. Strangers baked into your circumstance by a cruel star, echoes, mutating tornado. I don't know what love is, but I am certain it is my purpose to name your scars and claim them as my children until they age and travel far from you. You've been hurt, but you are not damaged. Take my hand and know the difference. And with every drop, know that I am dance for you. With every step, I syncopate in your direction. Let me tribal through your ribcage. Teach the air to be drum skin. Baila mami, because you know I shake salsa logic on everything. These ghouls do not want to keep time with me. Instead, I upshift warrior with a quickness, and I declare you are no longer prey. They can't crucify you. I got their nails. And with them, I finish this castle where every room is built to pour you maple sap sure into your dreams. So even if you think they're still circling you, death is not in your future, girl. I roam the desert picking my teeth with vulture bones. Let the monsters rattle your closet door if they want to. It's a gunslinger thing now. And I am Wyatt fucking Earp, blowing smoke off the barrel before they even reach. So yeah, this is the part where I tell you I am your close. This is the part where I ask heaven to slow dance you from midnight into my arms so I can weave thunder into this kiss. This is the time where I night, molding my palm to the small of your back until we are incantation, loosing melanin to just go ahead, be indigo, since we so blue, sick, and going home. Cause girl, I go in wizard. And yeah, this is the part where we're so tight we leave no air. Because watch, I asked Jesus, and he said he'd forgive us both if you called his name, sugar, just this one time, right before I take your breath away. So yeah, this is the part where I tell you I am so full, I have no room for a single secret. The part where I tell you these are not tears, I'm just discovering new ways to place your music on my skin. Haiku, I'm not a poet. I'm the ground words crawl across to get next to you. So yes, this is the part where I now, this is the part where I faith, this is the part, this, this is the part where you. Thank you,
Wow,
sir.
wow, incredible, incredible. I mean,
Thank you.
thank you for thank you for joining us. So the last time you and I saw each other was actually at a mic at Dim Lights in Pomona,
Yep.
California, and I introduced you to the executive director there, and you mentioned to her that your home venue was the lounge, right? So for those who are not quite familiar with the term home venue, because not everyone here is into the poetry scene, so what is it meant by the phrase home venue?
That's a good question. Home venue is a spot, an open mic spot, whether it be weekly or monthly or however that you frequent on a regular basis. That's the place where you have the most contemporaries. That's where you spit the most. That's where you consider that's your home base as a poet. And some people don't have a home venue because they're itinerant. They travel all over the place, and they don't. There's no one place where they land. But with the Poetry Lounge, which has been going for 22 years now, and I've been going for going. This is going into my 16th year going to the Poetry Lounge. That is my home venue. That is the place where I feel most connected to other poets. It's a place that I frequent the most every week, unless I'm working and traveling and whatnot. And so yeah, that's what a home venue is, and that's what the Poetry Lounge is to me.
Yeah. So, I have a few people lined up. So, like, for instance, Javon, I need to reschedule, but a few other people are coming. But you, I believe, might be the first poet who has made the lounge, um, coming from the home venue, right, of the
Yeah.
lounge, that I've had on yet. So can you tell the audience a little bit about DPL, about its history, its legacy? I mean, you mentioned 22 years; it's a long time, but can you mention just how foundational DPL really is to
Yeah,
poetry?
I'll do the best I can. I'm not one of the founders. As I said, I kind of joined in progress, but they had already been going for several years by the time I joined. What I do know, because I've become friends with the founders, four gentlemen, Shion Van Cleef, poetry, Dante Bosco, and Jamel Hooper. These four guys, started the Poetry Lounge. It all started in Dante's living room, and then they expanded to another venue to include more people, and eventually Greenway Court Theater on Fairfax Avenue in West Hollywood invited them to plant their roots at the theater, and so they've been at that theater for I, don't quote me on this, but I've been going 16 years, and I think they've been there at least 18 or 20 years at Greenway Court Theater. And so every week, every Tuesday, there will be 200 plus people standing in line to get in. It's very consistent, very little advertising. It's all, kind of word of mouth. People come from all over Southern California. They come from all over the country. When people are visiting LA, it's one of the meccas of spoken word for folks. And so it's been described as church for a lot of people. It's definitely a haven, a place where people can tell their stories.
Can you tell the audience about some of the programs they put on, like for instance, Ink Slam?
So Ink Slam, which is something that started almost a decade ago, probably over a decade ago, has now morphed into the Get Down Festival. But basically, every April, which is National Poetry Month, there is a poetry festival, a spoken word and poetry festival, and so there will be a series of events, whether it be a night for all LGBTQ performers, a night for people of color, an open mic night, or there may be a stage performance of spoken word. There may be some musical performances. We have a lot of workshops, including a roundtable discussion of a lot of the local host of venues in Southern California to just kind of talk about the state of the union in spoken word in at least Southern California. And so, yes, it's a dope event. Obviously, events where people are gathering are put on hold for a little while, but that's one of the ones that is something that we look forward to every year.
Yeah. And so, what are and I'm sorry to lean so heavy on you about these questions about the lounge, but
That's
it's
okay.
my own personal.
I'm happy to rep the lounge.
Well, you certainly 16 years, and I've certainly you're definitely part of the core team there. But also, it's just my own personal curiosity about some of these things. What moves and what general direction is the lounge going in with this COVID crisis to kind of get online? What's going on?
What's dope is that DPL, the Poetry Lounge, is responding the way a lot of people around the country are responding, where the impetus to create art and display art and to perform and receive art hasn't died. Hasn't been shut down with the quarantine. So one of the things that DPL is doing, like Busboys and Poets are doing in DC, and places in Long Beach are doing, and places even in Toronto. I even featured in Toronto on Zoom. Um, and as you know, as somebody who is the hardest working man in poetry, you know that what's happening is that people are responding. They're making sure that they get their voices heard. They're making Hosts and venues are making sure that people have an opportunity to be heard. So there are slams, there are open mics, there are kind of curated events like Aja Monet is doing, where she invites some of the Hall of Fame poets to just do kind of an afternoon with her. So it's been dope to see DPL kind of step up right away, honestly, to make sure that we remain a player in the game.
No, definitely. I mean, the arguably the largest player in the game. I mean, not to. I mean, not, I don't want to start any fires, but but definitely, DPL is the incredible, you know, incredible legacy and incredible and clearly leading the way into the next thing. Now, I have a question for you personally as a poet. If you've been doing these open mics and these zooms featuring and or just appearing, um, is it strange to do poetry while looking at your own face? Is that weird for you? Or are you how you dealing with that?
Oh, it's weird, but that's not the hardest part, honestly. The Because it's easy to kind of look at the camera and not not look at my own image. The hardest part is that when you're performing live, there's an echo. Even if people are not doing a call and response where they're responding actively, with cheers or finger snaps or whatever, there's a palpable force there. You're very aware of being in a community of people, and so there is kind of a chilly vibe with electronics that don't really give you that. Yes, you on Zoom you can see a lot of faces, but usually the sound is muted just to make sure that you can get through the poem without people, talking or whatever. And so that is an adjustment because it is at its I think at its finest, at its most resonant, performing in front of a crowd is a relationship. And so just like people are trying to manage relationships remotely, managing a relationship with a virtual room full of people is harder. So I don't know. No, I know for certain that I haven't really mastered how to make that work for me yet. All I can do is continue to offer, who I am as a poet, and hope that people respond. But there's a delay there, and it's often typed versus heard and felt, because I can't see people's faces reacting. You know how you when you're performing, you catch somebody's eye and you can tell that they're listening, and they're either enraptured by it or offended by it or surprised, whatever it is. You know that there's a there with with the screens. You're going off of faith a lot.
Yeah, those little clappy hands they put on them now.
Yeah, yeah. But I say all that to say, I love the fact that people have found a way to kind of MacGyver an experience out of it. It's like, no, we're not going to just go away and not listen to poetry. We're not going to stop performing poetry. We're going to figure it out. And if it's not ideal, but it's still there. We're making it work.
Right. I think there's aspects of it that are actually better. I mean, than other things, like the aspect that like Ajimone, right? So that's obviously always been the promise of the internet, that distance doesn't matter, right?
Right.
The time and
Yes.
distance, the distance is relative for the
Yeah.
internet. That's always been the promise of the internet, but we never really had the opportunity to use it because people are out there living their lives and there's time differences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're all forced to stay in across the world, it makes that okay. Now we can use the internet for those purposes. So that's better. What's worse are the things that you're mentioning, with the sad imitation of real life.
Yeah.
Uh, but here's the thing I'm thinking though, right? And I'm a little outside the box here, right? But on my own personal level, I've taken to like becoming like my own little independent filmmaker, like like camera, like doing like weird things. Um, so that's been kind of my Blair Witch poetry strategy.
But I think, but Matt, I think that's important. I think
Yeah.
people have to not have to. I think what's exciting is the opportunity to use technology rather than having technology using you. Like, you make it a tool. You don't make it something that you're passive to. So I like the fact that people are playing with it. If it's whether it's virtual backgrounds on Zoom, or what you're doing by just kind of playing with the hardware itself. I think that's dope, and I think there's going to be a lot more invention in that way because people are creative, and it doesn't matter what you put in front of them. It's like, okay, I got two sticks and four rocks and some leaves. I'm going to make something out of it, and no two people are going to make the same thing out of it. So I think that's dope. And to your point about just the shrinking of the world, that's amazing. So even with DPL, like generally we're getting people from Southern California, 95% of the people that are there. And so we may get somebody who's visiting from London or somebody who's visiting from Atlanta, but but on the live stream every week we've had somebody that wouldn't have been there if we were live at Greenway Court Theater from Amsterdam to Atlanta, and so that's been super dope.
So what happens if someone's on texting on their phone or talking on their phone at the lounge?
Oh well, one of the things that we try to create as a culture is the respect for the spoken word. You know, regardless of the levels of talent, regardless for subject matter, as long as it's respectful. And so, one of the things that I think we've been very consistent about, and Shihan will mention, every week. You come here to listen to poetry, so we don't want you texting. We don't want you talking about the experience while you're experiencing it, because you're not experiencing it if you're talking about it while it's happening. And so we insist that people not text during somebody's poem, and while Shihan's talking or in between poems, it's fine. And we enforce that. We will tap somebody on the shoulder politely if they forget that rule. And I think it's important because there's not too many places like there's the occasional retail store that says please leave your phones in your pocket, or a restaurant, but it's a rare thing where somebody encourages you to stay present.
Yeah, yeah. So I bring that up because if you can enforce that in person, I don't see why we can't enforce that on Zoom calls, right? So like, hey man, if you're gonna come into the Zoom, like don't be like cooking and banging pots and pans and be like, what's in the background? Like, no, focus so that you can like clap and people can be like, ooh, ah, and make those noises and not like, I'm on the phone noises,
Yeah.
like, hey
No,
man,
I mean, I
I,
think one of the things, I think you're
if this is
pointing to something
doing,
that is a
we need
that
to
is
enforce that.
but I think you're pointing to a generational experience with technology. If we're talking about digital natives, that is people who have always had this technology
Yeah,
in their lives. It's like a sixth finger to them. So they don't really think about it that much, and so second screen viewing is normal to do something with your device while you're doing something in real life, so to speak, is a normal experience. But that doesn't mean that it's because it's common that it's healthy. I mean, there's a lot of common experiences that aren't
yeah,
healthy. You can look at the people who are protesting the lockdown right now. That's a common experience in some towns where idiots are outside saying, let us back in the casinos. But that doesn't mean it's good for you. And
right.
so similarly, that level of trying to check people so they can evolve into a different use of not just the technology, but a different use of the experience of an artist presenting their wares. I agree with you. I think that would be I think that's a harder thing to do because people are in their house. And it's like, how are you going to police me in my living room? You know,
Yeah, yeah,
but if you're saying what I think, if you just kind of set the expectation, look, you can do what you want. You're home. You know what I mean? You're doing this voluntarily. It's free. You didn't have to pay to get in here, and I'm not paying you to be here. So part of it is just it's a negotiation. Here's what we would like. Here's the
yeah,
experience that we want the general public on Zoom to experience, and so we still want you to be present, even if you're at your house, even if you're looking at it on a tiny little phone, versus being in a 200-person theater.
yeah. I mean, if anyone can create the new decorum or the new standards of common decency in terms of Zoom life, I would entrust that the lounge could do it. So that's why I'm kind of subtly putting it out there.
No, I appreciate the nudge, and
Yeah,
I mean, I know you were reluctant to kind of to talk about the venues in a competitive way, and I think we can talk about the distinctions without them being competitive. The Poetry Lounge is the largest weekly open mic in the country, and I think that's okay to say, and I think that's something to be proud of. It doesn't mean that it's better. It doesn't mean that other venues are worse because they're smaller or younger. But I think it's important for people to know that a performance space that is based on poetry can thrive for 22 years. I think it's important that they know that. I think it's important to know that there are 200 people plus that we cram in there, every week, where people are sitting in the seats, 99 seats, and then another 100 plus people are sitting around on the
yeah,
stage. I think it's important that people know that that is an artistic force in the world.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And what I meant by the lounge having the power is not just the size of the place and the longevity of it. It's actually, like, just how, I mean, how I remember. I don't know how things are, if it's still the way, but like, I remember the way it was kind of run, the way Shion kind of, was one of the kind of the driving factor of this was he reminded me in a lot of ways of the boxing ref, Joe Cortez. Like, I'm fair, but I'm firm. Kind of like that.
Yes.
The lounge has a very unfair, but I'm firm kind of leadership, and so like I think that if anyone could do it and get the people to go along with it, I would put my money on the lounge.
Yeah, and Shihan would like that comparison because he's a big boxing fan. So, yeah, yeah. So he does his thing, and then we touch gloves and go at it.
Right, that's right. That's right. I'm fair,
So
but I'm firm, man.
people
Touch
do their
gloves.
thing, and
Yeah,
it's lovely because there is a range of talent from the person who has never spoken out loud with their poetry before to people who have been doing it for a decade,
yeah,
and I think it's important that people see both. I think it's important that it not be all amateurs and it not be all veterans, so you can see the range of what's possible and figure out where you as a poet, you as a listener fit, in that range. I think it's important that it remains a very diverse venue.
yeah. I think yeah. No, the proof is in the pudding. It definitely is. Now what I'm really interested, though, to kind of move this conversation now is like, what has the lounge meant in your life?
uh, it's interesting, I've been writing poetry since I was 8 years old, like actively working at it, because I was a shy kid and I wasn't really good with interacting with people, like, on the playground or in the streets or whatever. I mean, I did it occasionally, but I wasn't good at it. I wasn't comfortable with it. I was just super, super shy. And words have always been a haven for me. And so poetry is literally my first love. And so to have found a place um, that that respects it the way I do, and that encourages other people to respect it, and has been doing that for such a long time in such large numbers, is really, I'm moved by it and it's meaningful to me. So it is a place of comfort in that way, because it doesn't really, it's just like any institution. It often doesn't matter who the people are in it, as long as there's an ethic that kind of pervades it. And sometimes that can be a problem. I mean, institutional
Mhm.
racism is a problem because of that, because it doesn't
Right,
matter who you put in it, it's still oppressive to a lot of people.
right,
But in a
right.
benign way, because of the Poetry Lounge existing the way that it does, the crowd changes every week, not just every year. Every week we ask, hey, how many new people are in the audience? And there's like 30 people out of 200 that haven't been there before, every single week. And so it renews that energy, it renews that curiosity, it renews the stakes for the performers, so they're not constantly preaching to the same choir every week. And so for me, that's been just a real comfort, knowing that um, uh, whenever I go there, the way that I think about words, the way that I want to experience words, is going to be there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So you've been writing poetry for many, many years, but it wasn't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe you were before. Maybe I'm unaware. But like, but the lounge really kind of catapulted you into a kind of a voice within poetry. Known throughout the nation.
I think, as a performer, I certainly, the lounge is responsible for people being aware of who I am. If anybody's aware of who I am, it's because I've performed there most often and most consistently. Um, and so yeah, and for me, performing is important. I enjoy doing it, but it isn't as important to me as writing. And so, having found a place that has encouraged me as a performer has been really good. Like, I could stop performing tomorrow, but I couldn't stop writing. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
so to be in a space that says no, we get that, but we like the fact that you perform, and people have been, encouraging of that and supportive of that.
yeah,
And I've gotten better as a performer there more than I've gotten better performing anywhere else, because of the consistency of it, because of the support that I know that I have, that I can try stuff, and even if I fail, if I crash and burn, I'm still loved. You know what I mean? People still are like, yeah, we're still on your side. You know, you're not burning a bridge creatively just because something didn't work. And so I like that. I like that's Poetry Lounge is where I've taken the most risks as a performer, where I've tried the most stuff, where I could fail spectacularly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, for those who don't know, Poetry Lounge has been a launching pad. I mean, I'm not saying the lounge made anybody. I mean, people make themselves, and it's a launching pad. And but the the lounge has been a launching pad for the careers of many people who've gone on to tour the world, to the nation, the world, etc. You know, it's been a huge it's a huge venue, but it's also had huge talent like that has been that's coming in out of those doors, and you're definitely a part of that.
I appreciate it.
Uh, Oh, you're welcome. But like you mentioned, what's really core to you is the writing, and I think it's a really good segue into the next part. We can discuss your book. You come up with this new book. Can you tell our audience a little bit about your latest book?
Oh, uh, so yeah, in February, the book finally came out after talking about it for years, and curating a bunch of poems, because I write a bunch of stuff, and trying to figure out what was going to be in the book has been a challenge. And Silver Star Laboratory out of Long Beach was gracious enough to offer to publish it, and so it's out. As of February, the book is born. And it's called Boy, and it is a collection of 55 poems written over a course of years, at least I would say a decade, in terms of the range, because I'm cranking out stuff pretty. I mean, I publish a new poem on Facebook or and Instagram every week, and I've been doing that for years. And so if you just do the math on that, that's a bunch of stuff, which means it's not all good, and all of it shouldn't be in the book. And so trying to as the cliche goes, carve away everything that's not the statue of David, you
Right,
know,
right, right,
is
right.
is the job. The job isn't, do I have enough material? No, I got a bunch of material. Do I have enough good material? Do I have enough good material that makes sense in one collection? And do I have enough good material that fits in one collection that is releasable? And so that was the kind of narrowing down over the last few years. And so it's finally out, and it's the narrowing down had to do with kind of focusing on more kind of social justice themes, and looking at things that are not going right in domestic and global life, and addressing it in some way. I'm not saying that I have the answers, because that's certainly not the goal. Part of my job, I think, as a town crier, is to say in a different way, "Hey, this is messed up," and say it in such a way that somebody who may not have thought of it as messed up says, "Oh yeah, I agree, that is messed up," and then maybe they have an answer that I don't. And so the book, very deliberately, very consciously, is about those kinds of things that I
Yeah,
don't have answers for, but I think I have a loud voice for,
yeah,
and a loud, different voice, not again, not better, but different,
different. Yeah,
in such a way that sometimes difference catches your attention in a way that same doesn't. Sometimes hearing something the same way, you start to tune it out because it's the same. You're like, it's just like you're not aware of the hum of your refrigerator because it's a constant frequency.
yeah,
But if all of a sudden there was a gunshot, that would kind of break the monotony of what you're hearing, because it stood out, you know. And so the book is intentionally full of poems that are meant to kind of stand out from the white noise.
right, right. So the title "Boy," can you tell our audience why that title was chosen?
Yeah, there's a poem in the book called "Boy," and that poem is very specifically about Tamir Rice. It's kind of an impressionistic poem about what the last few moments of his life might have been like before he was shot, by a police officer in Ohio, a 12-year-old boy with a toy gun. And as an example of the misperception of black males in our society, that was one of the more tragic of the many tragic examples. A boy just outside playing with a gun and perceived at 12 years old and perceived as looking like a grown man wielding a gun. Just the idea of the lack of experience with black malehood is so chronic that it was possible for a police officer to mistake this as a grown man who was dangerous, as opposed to somebody who was just pacing in the snow. And
Yeah.
so the book is not just titled after that poem, which is written about and for Tamir Rice, but it's also the book is also dedicated to him, and other examples that are sadly too similar.
Yeah, no, I mean, just you sent it to me an hour or two before, and I got to, I read the first few poems, and I kind of skimmed through the rest. I see, you have a poem here dedicated to Khalif Browder, who might be a story that's a little less familiar to our audience than Tamir Rice. Can you explain to our audience just who Khalif was?
Yeah, it's a tragic story. A young guy who gets arrested, but doesn't get a trial for 3 years, and he's languishing in a New York prison, and trying to figure out what he's done wrong, and getting hoping that he's finally going to be accused of being a criminal, so he can at least fight that. Finally gets out, and then takes his own life because he can't ever get back to who he was. And I don't mean to be reductive of a very beautiful but short life as his, but that's the crux of what Khalif Browder his life meant to me. And so that poem is in a chapter of all persona poems where it's written from the point of view of Khalif Browder. And so there's a whole chapter that is written from the point of view of other people.
Yeah.
And so obviously I didn't know Khalif Browder, didn't wasn't in his head, never heard him talk about all the things, even though there was some public material about him. But just to try to imagine what it was like to be put away for 3 years, without having been convicted of anything, and then get out finally, and still not be able to recover from that experience. So it was just tragedy piled upon tragedy. And to your point, that not a lot of people did know about Khalif Browder, it was important for me to have that poem in the book, so that they at least had the opportunity to be more curious. If they read this poem and then went to read more, that would please me more than them liking the poem, honestly. To be able to honor his life by learning more about it would be the best possible outcome from a horrible tragedy.
Yeah. So Tamir Rice is covered in here. Khalif's life is covered. Also in the book, you mentioned, you talk about the incident in McKinney. For those who might not know, police assaulted young, young black children at a pool party, young black girl. Um, so much of this is like kind of a book is, I mean, it's called Boy, and there are a lot of examples of how black male youth are criminalized, but it's really kind of about the assault on black childhood. Much of the book, anyhow.
There's a lot about the assault on black childhood, black masculinity specifically, um, the assault on the trans community, the intolerance of uh, the LBGQ community, just a lot of othering. Um, was important for me to kind of be a siren about. But yes, there's a lot about the assault of black. Uh, uh, youth, and not just from people who aren't black. I mean, there's a poem in there um, about Alicia Keys and her son, and people who, you know, with the same color as Alicia Keys and her son were really kind of coming for her for allowing her son to paint his fingernails different colors, you know, and how that was just kind of a horrible assault on, you know, masculinity for, you know, for a kid that's not even in the first grade yet, you know. And so but that came from other black people. That poem wasn't about, you know, not black people picking on a black person. No, that poem was about black people picking on black people,
Hmm.
and about a very specific thing. So even though there's so much we black people should have learned by now about oppression that we shouldn't replicate it, you know, that's still a problem, you know.
Yeah.
And in the community that, you know, has you know, an untraditional way of loving, you know, whether it, you know, be, you know, same sex or just trying to figure out, you know, what gender expression to feel safe in. We you know, we internally still have a long way to go, even while we're dealing with the external um, oppression of the dominant culture.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so much of this book is about just you know these yeah, again, it's all in black, you know, on black life in general, and variations of you know black youth and black you know just black people overall. But even within these pages, you also included poems about the wall being proposed to be built on the Mexican border, as well as ICE. You know, and there are of course um, you know black undocumented people in this country, but so much that's kind of seen in a certain kind of way. And also, you know, a poem about Venezuela. So I mean, there's a lot in here that I'm curious why there's definitely a political statement, including these other communities within this book. So what was the intention there?
Part of the intention is showing that this sounds stupid. That oppression doesn't discriminate. You know, that sounds like an oxymoron, just kind of by definition. But almost everybody gets oppressed in some way. You know, except for being like, you know, a straight white guy. It's kind of a tough call for a lot of groups. And I didn't. And part of my antenna, you know, is I guess uh, sensitive enough that those things bother me too. So it's hard for me to just kind of stay in the lane of only. There's only a certain kind of stuff that gets on my nerves. So, um, you know, a child in custody, you know, at the border, you know, who dies because, you know, nobody's attending to her because she gets sick, dies, you know, and that's important, and that wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the policies that we have about the wall and about people coming from Mexico to the United States, and, you know, the ridiculousness about, you know, Venezuelan politics and how people have dealt with Muslims in America, how people have dealt with you know, trans girls and women, and the murders of them, or the separation of them from what is considered normal. All these kinds of oppression bother me because it resonates for the kinds of oppression that I've grown up with the most, which is, you know, more about being, you know, a black male in America. And I'm one of the lucky ones. Like, I have a lot of privilege in
Yeah.
the sense that there's a lot that I can escape every day because I have, you know, a great education and a great gig that allows me to, you know, live a certain lifestyle. But if I'm suffering it, and in some ways I'm aware of it every single day, but I can anesthetize myself to it, or I can escape from it, or I can lessen it in some way, or I can even push back because I have a certain level of personal power. You know, so what does it mean for, you know, Dejaria in McKinney, Texas, who's a 16-year-old black girl? You know, she doesn't have the kind of agency that I do to push back. You know, I mean, she did, you know, in her way, and, you know, God love her for it, but A, she shouldn't have to do it at all at 16, you know, and B, how much can you get done as a 16-year-old black girl in McKinney, Texas, with very little agency, and so if I can help that, if I can help amplify her story, then I'm happy to use my megaphone to do that. And it's not a matter of her not having a voice. She absolutely does. But if I can, as I said, make it louder, or part the clouds so her particular light can be seen, more clearly, then I think that's a decent use of my work.
You know, I'm kind of interested to get into this question here though, because outside of your work as a poet, and I know that's very much how you define yourself, but you're 9 to 5. You are you're kind of a high powered individual in your field, right? So I'm kind of curious about this though. I feel on my for me, right? And we have different lives, but like I feel for me, I experience way more racism being somebody who speaks at universities and very prominent universities at times, um, than I did when I was a manager at Big Five, assistant manager at Big Five.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Interesting.
I'm supposed to be an assistant manager at Big Five. That means like, hey, you're one of the smart ones. You can be an assistant manager. That's
Yeah.
what like that's the rise of like you're smarter than the rest of them, so
Mm-hmm.
you can be more than a cashier. You can be assistant manager. But for me to be like the leading expert that's being brought in by this campus and being paid a certain amount of money, being flown, then all of a sudden I must have cheated. I must have something,
Mm.
Yeah. So do you experience that in your field that like the higher you rise, the more you're not supposed to be here? Why are you here? Something must be wrong. Or have you managed to just
I experienced that more in my academic career,
mm,
honestly, than I experience in television. My experience in television is usually just one of surprise, where I show up at a meeting, and I can tell people weren't expecting the person to look like me, and and so there's a certain amount of that. And the other part of it, that the thing that precedes me in television that didn't always in my academic career is that I'm a doctor, and people are aware of that. It's on my resume, and so you you got to contend with that part at some point, because most of the people who are interviewing me aren't doctors, and
right, right.
so it's a harder job to dismiss that,
Yeah.
like right at the top. And so it's helped. It's an extra, arrow in the quiver, if you will. But when I was still coming up, in undergrad and graduate school, I had plenty of professors that were like surprised when I got 100% on an exam, and I resented their surprise. It wasn't a compliment, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, why shouldn't I? Why are you surprised? Did you expect the test to be that hard that nobody got 100%? And if nobody did, and I did, what does that mean? Why is that a surprise? And this isn't just kind of a one off, because you can't, or shouldn't at least, make generalizations just kind of based on one situation. It's really patterns that are more informative. But consistently, people being surprised at the cliche, "Wow, you're so well spoken, you're so
Yeah,
articulate."
right, right, right.
It's like, yeah, yeah, sure, I get that that's a compliment to you, but I resent it because of what you were expecting in the first place when I showed up. It shouldn't be a surprise at this point. I'm in graduate school, you know. It shouldn't be a surprise that I can put two sentences together. But I use that as an example of one of the things that even I, with privilege, have to experience that some other people don't. So it's just one of those things that kind of chips away at your soul every day. But you're still expected to bring 100% of your soul to the job, to the relationship, to the world. And some days are harder than others.
So everyone, you heard it here first. Academia is more racist than television. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But that yes, and I think that what you're describing though, I really often feel is that like you cannot as an individual completely escape this. I mean, we can't escape this stuff until we collectively escape it. I mean, until like
Yeah.
it's not possible as an individual because you're still gonna suffer these slings and arrows, and as an individual, yeah, you can shield yourself more, but you can't just be fully just be who you are and just that be that. It's always like this weird mystery, like how I don't get it. What's going on here? Like even if there's like not like, oh, you cheated, there's still like a fascinating. Like it's kind of
Yeah,
like
yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And and well put, that none of us are free until we're all free. And that's important. And circling back to the point of the book is meant to underscore that. That is, yes, I have a bunch of privilege, and if I don't write the book, my day goes fairly well every day, and if nobody ever hears any of these poems, my day is still going fairly well. But if somebody can read one of these poems and feel supported and heard, or if somebody can read one of these poems and feel like, oh wow, my head might have not been in the right place with this particular thing, maybe I should think more about this, or yes, this person is wrong, but I don't agree with him. But now I'm thinking about it. At least we've stimulated that internal conversation. So I feel like it's a responsibility that as they tell you in the New York subway, if you see something, say something. And so that's where I'm at as a writer.
no, I like that. I like that. Someone says you're articulate. Yes, I speak with the cadence of someone who's read far more books than you. That's a Cedillo. That's that. I don't put that on Donnie. That's just my tendencies. But no, I do think that despite all your not despite, but like even given all your personal successes and the things that you've achieved and the and the world that it's the way it's allowed you to move through the world that is not afforded to everyone. You still have a you're still this book really shows a deep commitment to this question of like a collective liberation. It's not just like a like you know a celebration of just like having made it or having pulled away from something or having done something to where it's really it's a really incredible stunning book about it's a difficult book. I mean, like I read the first few poems. They're hard to get through, and then I kind of skimmed the rest. I was like, it didn't get any easier. So it's
Yeah,
a
guilty, as charged. It was one of the things I had to give a lot of thought to, because it's not light in that regard. And there are some poems that do reflect some hope, and it was important that I ended on a note of hope, because it is such a dirge, as a book. But I didn't. At some point, it was important to just kind of commit to it, and not try to leaven it artificially, because those would have. I think those would have rung hollow, or like I wasn't committed to the clarion call that I was really trying to make. And um, and as and as somebody who, yeah, a bunch of privilege, I still get pulled over, and they can't tell I'm a TV producer or a doctor when they pull me over, and I've still been frisked and pulled out of a car and had my pockets checked. I've still gone through those things because people didn't see any of that privilege. They saw like a black dude that they didn't think should be where he was. And so I, I I can't shake that feeling, and so even if I can shake that experience by kind of hiding in my apartment, and in my job or in my car or whatever, I can't shake that experience. And so the book is tonally kind of meant to be an unshakable kind of situation.
yeah, yeah. So we keep talking about this book and keep talking about the power within it. Let's hear some poems.
Oh, okay. Um, I'm gonna. I'm trying to think. No, I have one that I have committed to memory. I'll do that one. Um, yeah, this is in the book. Tamika Washington, Malaysia Booker, Claire Legato, Ashanti Carmen, and 16 other trans women killed since 2019 so far. So far. And the ghost of the woman this month said, I was not ever trapped in a man's body. I was kept warm in the carcass of a dead animal until my demons could no longer find me. And What newborn doesn't smell sweetly of blood, mother? Which is why he used a gun to kill me from over there. Because the fresh whiff of me delivered with his hands around my neck, sexing my skin, would have made him the faggot his ribs gasped when he first saw me. Me and my sister's death is about air. We don't know who fired the shots. We do know that somebody thinking like Dick murdered us. Me and my sister's death is about how men choke before they choke, and how we tell boys when they can't catch their air when they cry, they got more girl than God caught in their throats. Yes, I am a woman like my sisters, but dead ass because of how men breathe. I am what I look like in a gun sight.
Yeah, very powerful.
Thank
Very
you.
powerful.
Thank you. And so, that's an example of an experience that I don't have to go through. You know what I mean? I don't have to go through being a trans woman. I don't have to go with what that's like in our society. I don't have to go through what it's like to be a black trans woman, where now we're piling up the things that people want to kill you for, you know, and just trying to get through the day, just trying to live life, just trying to love, you know. Uh, there are people who have basically said, no, you don't get to live. It's not okay that you're alive,
Yeah,
and that's happened in numbers that are staggering, and it's hard for me to shake stuff like that. So hence the
yeah,
poem.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's an incredible book. It's a moving book. It's a powerful book. It's a necessary book. There's a lot of adjectives that could be said, but it's a necessary book. It's a very it doesn't flinch. It doesn't look away. It demands that we look at this, and uncomfortable as it may be and painful as it may be, it's the kind of thing that we need to do in order to actually do something. And the fact that it's not one or two poems in the midst of, it's not like one or two really painful poems in a sea of love poems. It is the sea. It is the water. So it's an incredible collection you put together.
Thank you. I appreciate that,
Yeah,
and I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about it. And I hope people have an experience with it that's valuable. And either way, I'd love it if people talk about it, tell me how they feel
yeah,
about it, where they think it hit the mark, where they think it didn't, where they think they should be writing about something, or other people, or I should be writing about something different. I'm I'm open to that. If it doesn't spark a conversation, then it's not as much fun. It's not as valuable if it doesn't get people talking.
yeah. So um, of course, I'm very impressed with it, but I do feel for you a little bit. I mean, like, it's so weird to go from the heavy subject of that to kind of make an author kind of joke, or not an author, not a joke, but I feel kind of bad for you that it came out in February.
Yeah, I know, right?
My shit came out in January, so I mean, I don't just I'm not it's
Yeah,
not sympathy, it's empathy, so because my
yeah.
shit came out in January, so it's like, yeah,
Well,
but
here's the silver lining is that people have more time to read. So maybe this will be one of those things that they have time to read that they might not have gotten to before. But the truth is, I'd love more than anything, for life to get back to the way it was, and then people can ignore the book, however they want to, because they're out, at the movies, or at Costco or whatever.
whatever.
Yeah, but no, I appreciate you inviting me to talk about it. I appreciate that you let it into your life, and you let me kind of talk to your people.
Yeah. So we're gonna put a link below. What are some parting words you want people to know about you, your book, anything?
Oh, let's not have it be about me. I guess my parting words, because this is it is a weird time, and people are separated from the people that they normally get hugs from, or can just kind of look in the eye. And so, my parting words is that are continue to find joy, look for it, and try to give it back. to somebody else. Empathy is more important than almost anything. And so if you're trying to understand the feelings of somebody else, especially during this time when you can't look at those kind of micro cues that you might normally see at lunch, while you're at work, you might have to ask more questions. You might have to listen more to the grace notes that aren't in the regular conversation the way you're used to. So I'm encouraging people to stay connected, try to find new and inventive ways to connect, because the more we do that, the more that it makes it impossible for me to write a boy part two, you know, because things are going better and I don't have to write anything about how they're not going well.
Well, again, thank you, Donnie. Everyone, check out the book.
Matt, thank you. I really appreciate it.